Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and we're going to delve a little deeper into some real estate activities this evening. And to help us understand it, we have Kathleen Murphy, a real estate advisor. And you're associated with Sotheby's, and you've got your own...
I have a team, but yes, I am associated with Gibson Sotheby's International Realty, and we have about 400 agents throughout Massachusetts, many offices, including one in Manchester by the Sea. So I go back and forth between the Boston office and Manchester by the Sea, and I serve the North Shore area.
Yeah. So basically, the market seems to be a bit strange. So yes. I guess the question is, how do you get started buying a house or selling a house?
Well, it is challenging right now for buyers, and therefore it makes it a little bit challenging for sellers, but certainly the burden right now is more on buyers. Interest rates have played a big part in that. Interest rates took a nice low profile in 2022, and across the country we had over 6 million homes that were sold.
Oh yeah.
Interest rates took quite a rise in 2023, and that number of homes sold throughout the country was 4 million. Yeah. So big difference. So interest rates do play into the economy, obviously, and are a big factor in whether or not buyers can afford the home that they want and need.
Yeah. So typically we're looking at around 6 to 7% kind of interest rate. It all depends on what the Fed does this week. If they get gas pains, and next thing we know, it's up. They're going to push the rates back up, and then the housing rates go up. And one of the quirky things that bothers me is that as they push up the interest rates, the cost of housing goes up, and that drives up the problem that they're trying to solve, which is inflation.
Yes. It's a big deal, yes. Inflation obviously plays a part in what the Fed does, and even though the Fed doesn't control mortgage rates, what the Fed decides for other rates affects
the overnight
interest
banking
rates.
Rate. Yeah.
That's correct, the overnight lending banking rate.
Yeah.
So what's good for buyers to understand is there are a lot of different mortgage programs out there. What we typically talk about is the conventional 30-year fixed, which is that right now it's at about 6.5%. If you have good credit and you're putting 20% down. But there are a lot of other mortgage programs available for buyers out there in addition to the 30-year. Yeah. So that's good to know. If someone is not going to be in their home for a long time, if it's a starter home as an example, I encourage buyers to take a look at adjustable rate mortgages.
Yeah, how does that work? That surprised me.
So there are different types, again, of adjustable rate mortgages. There's not just one product.
It
There's
depends on
several.
what the market is. Yeah, as the market goes up and down, your mortgage rate goes up and down. But how does that work to the advantage of somebody who's only going to be there a short time?
So let's say that you think you're going to be in your home for 5 years. You might want to look at a 7-1 adjustable, which means that for the first 7 years, the mortgage loan rate is fixed. Okay. So you know going into it what that rate's going to be. But then it's subject to change every year after that 7th year. So on the 8th year, it would be subject to change, and that would be based on the current conditions at the time. So if you aren't sure, no one knows what rates are going to be like, right? 8 years from now, 7 years from now, even 1 month from now, things can change. But if you are pretty certain that you're only going to be in your house for a short time, because you want to start a family, or you know you're just going to get started and get something small and build equity, maybe you just want to take a look at those adjustable rate, shorter term mortgages and get a more favorable rate.
So, say I do exactly what you say. I find a small house. I get a 7-year one
Adjustable
rate, and the interest rates drop. I don't get the advantage of that
during that 7 years.
during that 7 years.
That's correct.
But if they go up
You're locked in to that
7
rate
years, but if I had a 30-year mortgage, I'd still be locked in.
you'd be locked in for 30 years. That's correct. Whether rates go up or down.
Yeah.
So for a 7/1 adjustable rate, you're locked in for 7 years.
Yeah.
And then after that is when the rate is adjusted once a year at the current rate at the time.
So if the rates drop, you take advantage of it. If the rates go up, you
That's
dig deeper
correct.
into your pocket.
That's correct. And that's why, the banks were so busy in 2022 when those interest rates dropped to, some people got in, 2.95%.
Yeah.
For an interest rate. So a lot of people were refinancing, and that's the challenge now that sellers have. If they refinanced during that period and they want to go somewhere else,
Yeah, no.
it's hard for them to make that decision to sell
No, they get-
if they've got that really good interest rate.
So what's Beverly like in terms of what's available, what's happening,
So currently, and I checked this just last night because I wanted to give you the most current information. Right now, there are only 9 single-family homes for sale in Beverly. 6 of those are under $1 million. So that under $1 million is by far where most of the activity is.
Yeah.
That's where most of the buyers right now are. So that does not offer buyers a lot of options. And that's what we're struggling with. That there's not a lot of inventory because of what we just said. Sellers are reluctant to sell right now because they've got that really low mortgage interest rate, and it's harder for them to figure out where to go because even if they bought something smaller, they might be paying more just because the interest rates are higher. Year to date, we've had 18 single-family homes sold in Beverly, and the average price was $1.1 million.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're over $1 million now for that average home sale price. There are 3 condos on the market, and there are none for sale under $1 million. So that's very interesting. And year to date, 8 condos have sold in Beverly, and the average price is $532,000. So clearly, those 3 condos that are on the market now that are over $1 million, they're probably on the market because they are over $1 million.
Probably been on the market for the whole
For
year,
some
too.
time,
Yeah.
yes. So we have this, not a whole lot of inventory, not a lot of options
No.
for buyers. And part of that is the economy, of course, and interest rates that we've talked about. But it's also a very desirable area. There's a lot of movement from Boston to the North Shore.
Yeah.
And people love Beverly for a lot of different reasons. Access to the water and a fun, vibrant downtown, a nice school system. So there's a lot of reasons to come here to Beverly.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I get this flyer from Zillow every so often, and they pick Beverly as the #1 city in the country if you want to buy on the waterfront. Beverly is it, the place to
So
be.
there you go. There's
And,
beautiful beaches, beautiful neighborhoods on the beach or on the water.
Yeah.
It's got a
So
lot
it-
going for it.
Yeah, so that drives up the price of the houses, so it makes the market much more tight. That's the polite way to say it.
Yes, and I would say that's true of most North Shore communities. I mean, we're seeing very similar, inventory levels and pricing, from Marblehead, Swampscott, Salem, Beverly, Manchester,
Yeah.
Rockport, Gloucester, Ipswich, Newburyport. It's pretty much the same story.
Yeah, it's a desirable place
It's
to
a
live.
very
It's
desirable
attractive.
place to live.
You
Yes.
got highways and school systems, so what more do you need? Yeah. So let's get down to the point of, somebody wants to buy a house. How do they get started in that?
Okay, so that's a very good question, and there's different ways that I can answer it. But because I'm an agent, I'm going to say the first place you should start is by choosing your agent. Choose someone you trust and someone you like. It's okay to interview more than one agent. Have a conversation with them. Sit down, have a cup of coffee, ask them about their background. I happen to have a background in banking.
Okay.
So I'm not a banker today, but I understand the world of finance. I know the language, and I can help demystify that process for buyers. Some people, even though they're not first-time home buyers, they may not have, sold and bought a home for 20 years.
Yeah.
The banking is very different today. So I think the first thing you need to do is choose your agent. Your agent is like your orchestra leader. Mm-hmm. They're going to help you interact with an attorney, with a lender if you're on the buy side, home inspector. They're going to keep everyone on the same page, making sure that the transaction goes through smoothly and that there are no snags. And if there are, your agent is going to work with you and your team to make sure that those are resolved as soon as possible.
Okay.
So you start with your agent. If you're buying, the next step is you've got to get a pre-approval. You really shouldn't be going shopping for houses unless you really know what you can afford. And that's
what you can afford is really what you can borrow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a good point, what you can borrow. And the bank may say you can borrow, $500,000, let's say, but you may be comfortable with $400,000 because you want to buy a camp up in New Hampshire. So just because the bank says you can borrow this amount, make sure that what you're borrowing aligns with your overall priorities.
Yeah.
So it's really important that buyers understand the mortgage process. There is a lot of paperwork that your bank or credit union, a mortgage broker is going to ask you to provide. So you need time to gather the documents, including, prior tax returns and your current income statement, bank statements, how you're going to provide the down payment amount. There's a lot of heavy lifting on the mortgage side. So you want to make sure that you start, once you've identified your agent, to get pre-approved. And then you're going to identify what are the priorities. Do you want to be in a particular neighborhood? Do you need to be near public transportation? Do you want to be in a particular school system? Do you want to be near the water?
Yeah.
And then that's got to align with your budget. And it's really important for buyers to be realistic. It is a challenging market. Prices are still on the rise, and you may not get everything that you want. I think if you can get 8 out of 10, you're doing really well, and that may be where you decide to go forward with an offer. If you want 10 out of 10, you can certainly do that, but it may take you years to get 10 out of 10 of all of those items that you've identified as a priority. So it's really important that you know what you want and what you're willing to be flexible on.
Yeah, you have to stack your priorities and what's really important, what's nice to have.
Exactly.
In between.
Yes.
And I guess you got to test the market to see what's out there.
Yeah, I always encourage
Calibrate
buyers
your reality.
that we go to open houses. Even if you are pretty sure that's not the property for you, let's go to the open house. Let's see what you like, what you don't like. And this is going to help a buyer understand what's happening in the market. Why was this house priced at this? Why was this house priced at this price?
Yeah.
Right? And unless you go in and you're seeing the quality of the home, maybe you don't know it has a brand new furnace because that is not in the public space anywhere, or that it has a new roof. You need to get on site and you need to see what's next door to the property. And a lot of this you can do online through Google Maps, but it's really nice to get in there and see how old the systems are, and are the systems working? Are the appliances working? So being on site tells you a lot about a property, and eventually buyers will get the feel for the market. And right now we have a rhythm. So typically, a house will come on the market on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, even a Thursday. And then you have open houses on Saturday and Sunday, and offers are due Monday. So it's a very short window.
That's quick, yeah.
It's a quick cycle. So if a house doesn't get a contract, in that time period, and it's got to go on to a second week, then we say it may not be priced right, or there just could be something that's off about the property.
Yeah.
But that's the cycle right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that cycle is lengthened a bit if you have a multi-million-dollar property. You usually don't have a quick of a deadline to submit an offer because, those kinds of transactions, usually people want more time to think about it.
Yeah.
Because there's just more at stake.
There's more money at stake, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And when you buy one of these $1 million plus places, it's probably been around for a while, so you have to decide whether you're going to be a handyman or not.
That's right. And, that's the other thing. It's expensive to renovate, and it can be difficult to find someone to come and do renovations and improvements.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
like everything else. Everybody's too busy.
Everybody's too busy. Yeah, there's a lot of work out there.
Well, from the other side of the game, suppose you want to sell.
Suppose you want to sell, yes. So I always start with letting sellers know clean is king. Have your house professionally cleaned. And that means everything from window wells to inside your oven, windows. The perception is very important for your property. Making sure it's organized, and that's where staging is involved. So cleaning, staging.
What do you mean by staging?
So staging, you can do staging in two ways. You can remove everything from your house and bring in what's called staging furniture.
Oh, really?
So everything looks new and it looks, it's with the modern trends, right?
Yeah.
So that your house looks really up to date. Or you can do, and I actually like to do this more than full staging, is just to do editing. So remove those pieces that are not helping sell the property at all, but work with what the homeowner has. A lot of times, and I would say 99.9% of the time, homeowners have lovely things. And if you just remove the things that aren't so lovely, the house can look completely different. And you can rearrange artwork or you can supplement your artwork. But presenting rooms so that they have a nice flow and they're inviting and they're warm, not overly cluttered. We like to remove anything that's personal, any photographs, ashes, all of those things that are very personal.
Yeah.
It's good to put away somewhere else while you're selling your home. It can be a bit of a challenge for sellers, but selling the home is not the home you live in. They're two different objectives, and so sellers need to make that mindset shift.
Yeah, because the new buyer has got their own idea of what they want.
Exactly.
And if they've got too much of you still in the house, it doesn't fit their model.
Yeah, they don't feel like there's a place for them.
Or it doesn't look like it can be adapted to where they want to go. Mm-hmm. And I'm online quite often with Zillow just to see what's happening in the neighborhood. And you get a feel for what's the market expecting, and at the same time you get on some of these things like Better Homes and Gardens is another one that periodically has this is what you need to do to establish curb appeal, and this is what you need to do if you're trying to sell. So everybody and his brother, I guess, has got their laundry list of...
They do. That's the nice thing about having access to so much information thanks to the internet, that all of these tips and strategies are available online. What your agent can help you do is actually execute them and help you decide, what pieces should stay, what pieces should go. I'm talking about furniture,
Yeah.
where to move things around, what isn't looking so good. Sellers also have, they can be blindsided because they've lived in the home for so long.
Oh, yeah.
You don't see things anymore,
Yeah.
right?
This chair from Aunt Mary is absolutely gorgeous.
Right. The cat may have scratched up all of the upholstery, but you don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
But somebody coming in with a fresh pair of eyes can help you sort that out. The other recommendation I have for sellers is to think about getting a home inspection. So, home inspection, depending on the square footage of your home, it's probably around $500. You get a professional home inspector to come in, take a look at your systems, your windows, the structure, and make recommendations for what should be taken care of before you put the home on the market. This will help sellers have peace of mind because you don't want to get hit when you're in the middle of negotiations. You've settled on a price, and then the buyer says, well, we hired a home inspector and he found X, Y, and Z, and now we want to take $10,000 off the price. That's not a position that a seller wants to be in.
Yeah.
So it's better to not have surprises. And if you do find something during the home inspection, you just price your home accordingly if you don't want to fix it. And let's say that you have your radon system is no longer working, as an example. You can disclose that to the buyer and say, we have reflected that in the price. We know you're going to need to put a new radon system in.
Yeah.
So that's going to be on you, Mr. Buyer. We are disclosing it. We feel like we've priced the house with that in mind. So you don't always have to fix what the home inspector finds. You do need to disclose certain things.
Yeah.
And again, your agent will make sure that you are compliant in that regard. But it's always good not to be surprised as a home seller.
You keep coming up with this thing, the agent does this, the agent, how do you get into this business? I mean, where do you develop the background to actually go through all this paraphernalia, if you will?
Well, that's a good question. So I felt that my background in banking really helped prepare me because I was very comfortable with contracts, disclosures, and being in a regulated industry. Although I think banking is much more regulated than real estate, but we certainly do have state and federal regulations in our industry. And you have to take exams in order to get your state license, and it's important to note that each state has its own licensing requirements. So you have to have classroom work, you have to pass an exam, and you have to be knowledgeable about federal regulations such as fair housing, right, which basically makes sure that agents and sellers and landlords are not discriminating. And so we need to make sure that in anything that we talk about, when we are describing a property or describing a neighborhood or an area, that we are not discriminating, that we're not showing a particular client only particular neighborhoods and not all the neighborhoods where there may be homes that fit their criteria. You need to know about some state and local regulations that will impact your buyers and your sellers, such as zoning. I had a transaction once where the property was on the water and the dock was old and it was going to need to be replaced. And we did some research on it, and we found that it was going to be quite challenging to replace the dock because of eelgrass, which was a protected species. Now, that's something that it doesn't happen a lot, but this is, even if your agent may not know a specific thing that is that detailed, but just to have the mindset of, we're on the water. I may not know everything, but I know where to go look to see if they buy this property or if my seller's selling a property, what I might need to disclose. So it's important that an agent knows about these local and state regulations as well as the federal regulations. The state of Massachusetts also requires ongoing education, much like is required, for an attorney. You have to have continuing education requirements to maintain your license. And in terms of requirements and being an agent, that's the technical side of it. It's also, if you're going to be an effective agent, you really need to hone your marketing skills, because really that's what we do. We market properties and we market our clients. We want to present our buyers in the best way if they're making an offer, and we want to present properties in the most effective way if we're marketing properties. So social media has made that a lot easier, but there's a lot to social media, right? There's all kinds of different platforms.
Yeah.
There's email. There's still print, which is still effective in terms of real estate. So you want to make sure that your agent markets your property very aggressively. And you should sit down with your agent and have a conversation. If you're a seller, as an example, who is the best demographic? Is it empty nesters? Is it young professionals? Who's the best audience, do we think, for this property? And then develop messaging and decide where to push out that messaging based on the audience that you want to attract to your property.
Well, you mentioned earlier that there's like a 1-week cycle to a house hits the market and is sold by next Monday. They're signing papers, and there's no other way than go social media to react that quickly.
That's correct.
And you don't get too many shots at it because it's a one-shot deal, because next week it's gone.
That's correct.
Or you hope it's gone, depending on which side of the game you're in.
And, that's a really good point. And I'll give you a recent example. A couple of weeks ago, I put on a historic property in Salem, and I put it on the market on a Wednesday. On Thursday and Friday, between those 2 days, I had 6 private showings. I had an open house on Saturday where there were 15 parties that came through. And on Sunday, I had 16 parties that came through. And on Monday, I had 4 offers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's quick.
That's quick. It's a very quick cycle.
Yeah. So it's also quick. The show is.
The show, I can't believe it's over.
Yeah.
I didn't even talk about, the benefits of being an agent, but I'm sure there's a lot of information out there in that space.
Well, the next time you come back,
but the next time I come back, I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this evening. And as usual, if you've got some comments, my email address is at the end of the credits. And if you have a longer comment you want to make, there's always room for you here at the table. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.